Hey, everybody. This is attorney Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. And today we are doing a Q&A live stream. So if you have any small business law questions for me, please go ahead and post them in the chat, which will be over there, I think. I don't know if it switches me around. So as I'm waiting for your questions to go in, because it always takes a little bit of time just because it takes time for things to process. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the new things that I have going on. And right now I'm looking at my phone because I want to make sure that the live stream's actually working. And so I always have my own live stream on. So, and it's also good to have the chat somewhere else. All right. So post any of your questions, small business law questions in the chat. And meanwhile, I'm going to talk about some things that we have now going on. One of them is the new Discord. So their link is in the chat. I think you should be able to see it. I'll post it again later on. What Discord is, for those of you who don't know, is Discord is like a group like Facebook groups or Slack or forums back in the day. Discord was originally created for gamers to be able to talk to each other as they're playing games together, really for friends and to have a community. But it has grown for people to host all kinds of different communities there. I'm part of a bunch of different communities on Discord. So I've created Discord for all of us because, there's 10,000 people now, yay, who subscribe to this channel. It's a lot of small business owners. And there's a lot of people that you can network with, that you can access for resources. But because we're just on YouTube, it's really hard to network with people in the comments on a video. I don't even know how you would do that, right? So that's the idea of the Discord, is for people to be able to connect with each other. I'm also going to be doing some other things in the Discord, but that's kind of the place to start. So you can go ahead and join up and be one of the first people to be in there. And hi everyone who's joining. So I'm just checking to make sure that everything is working okay. It looks like it. So as I'm waiting for y'all to put some questions, small business law questions in the chat, I also want to talk about some new things that I'm going to be doing, just so you know what's going to be going on in the next few months and really the next year. So as I said, there's a Discord that I actually went live late last night. And then also it's not quite ready yet. I'm going to have a few things, other resources for you. One of them are checklists. These are going to be checklists. Actually, they're kind of 95% done, but they're not 100% done, which is why they're not launching right now. I have checklists that are Google Sheets, Excel spreadsheets. I'm going to have in different formats, whatever works for you, to get your trademark application on file, to set up your LLC in California. Those are the first two that are almost ready to go. And each of those checklists, and it also has like a budget and stuff like that. It's multiple different sheets inside the spreadsheet. Has a video to go with it where I explain everything on the checklist and kind of go on and on about all kinds of different things. The trademark stuff is almost ready to go, and the video for that's like 45 minutes long. This will be sold directly on my channel, so there'll be one of those merch bars, and you'll be able to buy it right from there. The price point, I haven't completely decided because I haven't finished it all yet, but under $10, so something that will be very accessible for people. And I'm also going to be putting that stuff in the Patreon. So I'm going to be relaunching my Patreon, and then if you're in the Patreon, you get all the checklists. And I'll talk a little bit more about the other stuff in the Patreon. So I have a question now. Hello. If I start my LLC S Corp, say like on November 1st, will I have to pay the California's $800 franchise fee come January 2023? So how it will work is that, let's say you filed it, like right now or November 1st. Then you don't have to pay the $800 a year for 2022. You do have to pay the $800 a year for 2023, but it's not due on January 1st. It's due, like they actually want you to do it. They want you to pay it over the year in your estimated taxes. A lot of people don't pay it though until they file their tax return for that year. So you'd file your tax return for 2023 in early 2024, and that's when you'd pay it. If you do that, you have to pay a little bit of a fine, but it's really small. It's like, I think the last time I did it was like $22, which is worth it for not having to pay $800 in my opinion, but that's something you'd have to calculate out, and who knows what they'll change with the fine is. So something to be aware of. Um, I only would file an LLC in November, December, and have it be active right then if the business is like ready to go and we really need it to start right then. Otherwise, I'd have it be starting as of January. You can file it now and have it be effective as of January 1st to get your $800 a year for the next time. Okay, so another question. I'm new to starting a small business. How does sales tax work with setting up an online business? So, sales tax is based on the state that you're in or a state that you're required to do sales taxes in because we're complicated. That it's a state law thing. So let's say, and the rules are different from state to state. So for example, let's say you were set up a business in California and you were selling stuff in California. You only have to do sales tax in California if you're selling products for the most part. If you're selling services, you don't have to. If you sell a service and a product bundled, you'd have to do sales tax for the product part. Electronic stuff like an ebook or something is not taxable under sales tax in California unless you deliver it in a physical means. So you put it on a USB drive and you hand it to someone, which you don't do very often, but someone could do. That's not true in other states. In some states, there are some services that are taxable. In some states, digital products are taxable. So you have to look at that state that you're in. Then you might have to pay sales taxes in other states, but it really depends on if you met the nexus requirement, which will typically be you have some physical connection there, like you have a warehouse there, or you're making a lot of sales. And typically a lot, I mean, like it might be $400,000 of sales. Like usually it's a lot of money. What I recommend though, if you're going to be selling in a lot of different places, you either can use a marketplace facilitator, like you sell all your stuff on Etsy, and then they handle all the sales tax. So you don't have to deal with it. Or if you're going to be selling direct, you use a service. Like I'm going to post this link in the chat called TaxJar. This is a service. This is what I would use if I was selling products. I would, and because they actually, I think they're owned. Yeah, they're owned by Stripe. So they would connect with Stripe, which is good if you use Stripe as your merchant processor. And they would handle all the calculations for you because you don't want to deal with that. Okay. Let me look back and look. So another question, I will start a corporation once I have bylaws. What do I do with it? So the bylaws are something that you just keep. You don't have to file bylaws anywhere. Occasionally you have to show them to somebody, but that's not very often. So when you set up a corporation, once you file the stuff with the state, so the corporation exists, you have bylaws, then you're going to have minutes of your shareholders meeting and your directors meeting. Or your directors meeting. Your shareholders are going to elect your directors. That's mostly what they do. And then the directors will have minutes of a meeting where they have a bunch of stuff that they do. They make the kind of rules of they implement the rules of the corporation. So they'll say what the officers' jobs are and all this kind of stuff. Name who the officers are going to be, things like that. Make big decisions that aren't day-to-day business. That's what the directors do. So like if you're going to take out a big giant loan, directors would approve that. Then once you do your bylaws and do any kind of shareholders minutes, director meetings, board of directors minutes, that stuff is you just keep in your file. And then you have to have a shareholder meeting once a year, a board of directors meetings once a year, if not more often, to approve something. Like when people got loans from the Small Business Administration during the COVID stuff, and there was all those different, PPP and all those different loans you could get, your board of directors would approve that. You should have a meeting. Now, if you're the only person, I have an S corporation, it's my law firm, and it's just me. So I'm like having a meeting with myself. It's totally weird and odd. But really what I do is I have put something in my bylaws that says that my meetings can be via, they don't have to be live. They can be on paper. So I just type something up that's my memorialization of my meeting that I literally had with myself. Sometimes I have clients who actually make their meetings like this kind of ritual. So, they have their meeting on January 15th and they go over everything from the prior year. And they might even light a candle and have a little celebration of everything that happened. You know what I mean? So you can make it so it's a nice part of your process in your business. Okay, let me look over the questions. Where can I find if the business I'm starting needs a special license to start it? Oh, so yeah, this is a hard question because it's there's a lot of different places to look. So very few of you or whatever need some kind of license from the federal government. That's for very specific things, banking or something. Generally speaking, you're going to need licenses at the other levels of government. So you might need something from the state, you might need something from the county, you might need something from your city or town. And who it is, like which level it is and which license you need, it it's different from state to state, from county to county, from town to town. Sometimes you need a general business license, but we're talking about special things for the particular thing. Some states, if you go on their website for the state, you go on there, like it's like their Secretary of State's website, or it might be their Department of Corporations website. They'll have like a little guide, and I'm starting a business, and you click on that and you fill out a whole bunch of things, and then it tells you what stuff you need. A lot of states have something like that. Some counties and some towns do. Typically, the bigger ones have something like that. You can also, once you get to smaller places, I mean, the websites for big, states and counties usually have a lot of things in big cities. If you're in a smaller town, you may have to actually go down there and talk to them, or call them on the phone, or send them an email. And they usually will let you know what you need, because they want you to pay them money. So they're usually pretty good about that. Is it okay to have the same person as president, treasurer, secretary for registration? It depends on the state. So some states have a rule for so first we're looking at LLCs or corporations. I think for LLCs, I don't think there's anywhere where you have to have multiple members, multiple officers, I think. But for corporations, some states, you can have one person be everything. For my corporation, one person can be everything. If there are very few owners. So how it works in California is if there's only one owner, that person can be the director. But if there's 5 owners, then I think the board of directors have to have 3 members. I would always look this up, because it's the rule is different from every single state. Also, there's special rules if you have a professional corporation versus a regular corporation. So as a lawyer of a professional corporation, so the owners all have, and probably the board of directors too, all have to be lawyers. Someone admitted to the bar. So it'd be the same rule for other things. Okay. So you'd have to look up the rule for your particular state, and I would look it up at the Department of Corporations or Secretary of State. It depends on what they call it there, and see what their particular rules are. There'll be some form you have to file with them to tell them who your officers are. Most likely it's your statement of information, it's your annual report, something like that. And typically it will tell you in that form, in the instructions for that form. I know in California, when you file your statement of information, if you have it will reject things unless you're filling it out correctly. Now, usually, not always. It's not perfect. It's a new system. Okay, so Chavez asked, I want to make a website for my construction business. I haven't made any sales yet. I plan to make sales in the new year. Should I wait to make a website in the new year for tax deductions? So this is something I actually haven't looked up to see if there's new changes in this laws, but so there are special rules for startup costs for businesses. So until your business is actually launched and someone can actually buy something, typically from a tax perspective, they take all the kind of startup expenses, and that gets capitalized into the business, and then you amortize it over years, which I know that's a whole lot of stuff, but the point of that is that it's taxed differently than regular deductions. But there's some years and at some income levels, you can take it as a rate of deduction. And the rules change like that all the time. And it's not something that I have done the taxes on recently. So this is something that you may want to talk to a tax person about, whoever you're planning to do your business taxes, talk to them about the best way to do it as of right now both in your state and as well as in your personal in financial situation, because it can depend on your personal finances too, if you have a sole proprietorship or a partnership. And also how much money the business is going to make. So that's one of those things that does change depending upon the situation. Yeah, I actually don't know the rule for the president's treasurer secretary for Delaware C corporations off the top of my head, because I don't form Delaware C corporations. So, hello. So let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Sometimes things are in my computer, but they're not, or in my phone, but not in my computer. So let me just check over this and make sure there's not something that I'm missing. It doesn't work particularly perfectly. Okay. So I wanted to go back a little bit while I'm waiting for some more questions. As I said, I launched the Discord last night. So y'all can join that if you want to connect with other small business owners. And also, it's a really good way to keep on top of these kind of things because YouTube doesn't always push this stuff out very well. And people miss these live streams all the time. And so that's kind of a way to keep in touch is to join the Discord community, and then it's free, so that way you don't miss out on other, Q&A live streams in the future. Let me close this text jar thing. Okay. Another question. Can you explain ink file? You can start a business in California $5. Basic plan is still $250 when I up the cost. So the short version is ink file has a loss leader package. What I mean by loss leader is when you sell something that you're taking a loss on, so you can get people on your list and you can sell them other things. So InkFile has their most simple package has something where, as of last time I looked at it, where all they charge you is the $5 fee, which is the California fee for getting the certified copy, because there's no $70 filing fee as right now in 2022, because it was waived, special COVID rule kind of thing. And they are taking a loss on that because they're going to upsell you a whole bunch of stuff. And so that's the idea. And so if you're going to use InkFile, you would want to look at the other packages. One of the big things too with their cheapest package is they don't promise to file it quickly. Like they might take weeks and weeks and weeks to file your thing. I mean, I really think you'd be better off just filing it yourself, most likely. But if you're not comfortable doing that, or if you want the other things that they do for you, like getting registered agent, all that kind of stuff, then you definitely want one of the other packages because they'll do it quicker because you don't want to wait, 2 months for them to file it. And yeah, I actually think there's a good point in doing a website earlier than later. I mean, this is one thing that I found in my businesses is that for a website, for social media, for a YouTube channel, whatever, it is good to get things started even before you're selling things. So you can build up traffic, so you can build up people who know who you are, and so you can actually have someone to launch stuff to. So, I mean, I have another business that isn't this one, and I've started a YouTube channel and started putting up videos. This is a long, slow process because it's not my main focus right now. But the idea is that I'm not selling anything for that. I'm not going to be selling anything for that for a long time, but I'm building up that traffic and that audience, etc. So it's there whenever I do want to actually launch things. Okay, it will cost you much more once you pay for all these documents individually. Would you say it costs less to save a single file and paying for each of these documents businesses individually? There's a so would it cost if you're going to hire a lawyer to actually draft stuff, then you would definitely go to the lawyer and have them do everything all at once and get a package. For Inkfile or whatever other thing that you're using, you could do it as a package with them to get all those different things. It might actually be cheaper. There are also other services where you can get a lot of those documents and as well as other documents, something a video that I'm going to do in the future that I have not done yet is just that, like reviewing a bunch of sites to get legal documents and forms from, because there are ones where you buy each individual one. There's ones where it's like a service you pay like a monthly fee for. And so I'm sure some of them are good and some of them are not. So I want to sign up for some of them and do a big review of all that stuff. I think that would be very helpful because it's not just the operating agreement and that stuff. It's also a whole bunch of other things you're probably going to need. So one of the things too with the things like an operating agreement is as far as I know, they're just giving you a template. Some of these places might actually have you kind of fill out a little questionnaire and they might have an app that creates it for you. But you have to see what they're actually doing. So I found it very true with like LegalZoom, for example, where I've had clients use LegalZoom and they sent them their operating agreement and they didn't really even, I don't know if they did not tell them to sign it. It was never signed. So it was kind of useless. It was just a bunch of papers in a file. And that's just generally true. Okay. The best tax option for an LLC. So if you're starting out a brand new business and it's not making any money or it's making a very small amount of money, most of the time you want your LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship if it's one person, or an LLC taxed as a partnership if it's multiple people, because the tax benefits of being an LLC taxed as an S corporation will not kick in because you're not making enough money. And if you're actually taking a loss, you want to take that loss on your personal taxes against your, salary from your day job or whatever. And then a certain point, somewhere where you're making some kind of five-figure profit at least, then the tax benefits kick in. Now that's an oversimplification. And then you switch the S corp. I mean, to the S corp being taxed to LLC being taxed as an S corp. That's not 100% true for every situation, because there are some situations where you can't be an LLC's taxed as an S corp. For example, if one of the owners is not a U.S. citizen or doesn't have a green card, you can't do that tax status. And sometimes a C corp is better for certain situations. Sometimes just being a C corp all the way. Or LLC tax as C corp for certain kinds of benefits and things, they're taxed differently. But for most people, you start a sole proprietorship or partnership tax status for your LLC, and then you change when it makes sense from a tax perspective. Because having an S corp or a C corp definitely is more complicated, and it's going to be more money you have to pay people to deal with all that complexity. Okay. So right now, I am not taking new clients, and do not foresee taking new clients in the near future. Um, how people can get advice from me will be through the Patreon. So there'll be different levels of Patreon where you can get advice from me in different ways, depending upon what level you're in. I am not ready to launch that right now. But that will be the way. So the highest level, you get phone calls, and the medium level, you get we'll do text, DM kind of thing. So that will be in there. So right now I'm not taking new clients. Da, 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 Having a holding company for your LLC. Yeah. So, um, there's a lot of different situations where may want to have some kind of holding company. So sometimes a holding company is you have this umbrella holding company for multiple businesses under it. The businesses may all be just DBAs, or they may be their own LLCs or corporations. And typically you're doing that because you want to have it be easier and cheaper than setting up a whole bunch of different disconnected things. You can set it up such that the income and expenses, like the tax stuff, flows up to the main business, and that business will be the one that actually deals with all the taxes, and there's tax advantages to that is the short version of that, because it really depends on the situation. Sometimes also you may have a business like an LLC that is owned by two different or however many parties, and each of them form their own LLC or corporation that is the owner instead of them personally. And maybe they own other things in these businesses. Who knows? But they do. The idea there is sometimes people do that to be anonymous, so their main LLC doesn't have their name on it. It's this other their LLC or corporation. Maybe they form in Wyoming or New Mexico or something like that, so they can have anonymity. But also sometimes they do it for tax purposes too. So it's a common thing where people have multiple business owners. So yeah, sometimes you can have one on top that holds a bunch of things. Sometimes you can have one thing here that has a bunch of things on top. It really depends on the exact situation. One thing just to always remember, if you have a holding company with a bunch of DBAs, it's going to be a very low cost situation. You just have to do the DBAs once and then renew them every 5 years. But if you have a holding LLC that owns a bunch of other LLCs or corporations, that's going to be a lot of expense to form and to pay the taxes and to do the taxes and bookkeeping, because you have to maintain separation between all those different businesses legally, which is different than if they're just DBAs. Okay. A lot of people say wait until you make 45K or more to switch to S corp. Main reason I want to set it up is because it costs less in taxes, I also want to pay myself a salary through payroll. So when I set up this law firm, I immediately started out as an S corp because I didn't want to have to switch later because I hate that. Okay, I did it for many clients, switching from a sole proprietorship to an S corp or taking an LLC that's a taxed as a sole proprietorship and switching it to be taxed as an S corp and stuff. It's a bunch of paperwork and complexity, and you have to redo a whole bunch of things, especially if you're switching from sole proprietorship to an S corp or sole proprietorship to an LLC. You save costs and complexity in the beginning, but you add it a lot later. Now, maybe you will have the money later to pay someone to do it, but I like to just take it all care of in the beginning. So that's what I did in my case. And I, ran payroll and all that stuff from the very beginning and didn't have to change things along the way. Made it easier for me. But that's a kind of a personal thing. You have to know what you're like. Um, if you have an S corp, an LLC tax an S corp, or a corporation tax an S corp, it does have more paperwork. You have to keep things separate. You have to have its own bookkeeping. You have to do a tax filing, a tax return for the S corporation tax return. Most people will want to hire that out. I do mine, but I'm a lawyer, so I don't necessarily recommend it. There's no TurboTax for that. Like you actually have to either use accounting, accounting firms have software for that, but otherwise you have to do it on paper, which that's a lot. So it really depends on what your tolerance for switching things later is. But for me, I actually started out as an S corp because I didn't want to have to switch. So it really depends. Yeah, and one of the things too, along with that is I have clients who didn't want to do an LLC taxed as an S corp. They just wanted a corporation taxed as an S corp because that to them was easier, made more sense. It really depends on your what makes sense to you. It's not wrong. An LLC tax and S corp gives you more flexibility legally in the sense that you don't have to do annual meetings, but because you're not required to as an LLC. But if you can remember to do the annual meetings, it's about the same. It's not significantly different. So for a lot of people, just having a corporation tax as an S corp or a corporation even tax as a C corp, if that makes sense from a tax perspective, is a better idea. Okay, hold on. Let me scroll up. My understanding is that licensed clinical social workers have to be professional corporations. Yes. Ask the licensing board. Like this is my general recommendation is always go to the licensing board for whatever the license is because they'll tell you. Sometimes some licensed people's groups, some new law was passed to let them be LCs. Like that happens sometimes. But my understanding is that licensed clinical social workers that goes under the same category as therapists and other people in healthcare, mental health, all that stuff, and that's all professional corporations. Yeah, and actually, that's a good point about being more legitimate. So if you're doing business with certain sectors, you would rather be a corporation than an LLC. So for example, if you're doing business with other businesses that are overseas outside the United States, a lot of them they don't know what an LLC is. That's like a US thing. Okay. But they know what a corporation is because there's corporations everywhere. So if your business is mostly doing business internationally, you may want to be a corporation because I've had clients where they were I had a client who was in Germany and was setting up their business here in the United States. And, I was like, oh, you could do LLC, whatever. And they had no interest in that because they don't have LLCs in Germany. They wanted a corporation. That made sense to them. They were comfortable with that. They were comfortable with all the paperwork. And then also some kind of more traditional businesses in the United States might even be more comfortable with another corporation. They definitely will become more comfortable with a corporation or LLC than a sole proprietor. And then I have a number of clients, especially here in California, who do consulting where the main reason they set up an LLC or a corporation is because their clients demand that of them because they don't want to accidentally have an employee. So they want to make sure they're doing business with another company, not with a random independent contractor who's accidentally an employee under some new law in California. So that can be really important if your clients are corporations. Um, when you start a corporation, you have initial stocks. Most people only put 100 shares. Is that true? I actually don't know what most people do. Um, to some extent, you can put almost anything. It does impact certain industries and certain filings, and this is kind of like getting into some real nitty-gritty stuff. But there are sometimes you have to do a filing with your state where you disclose that you've done an initial initial private offering of your shares. You have to disclose how much it is per share and how much it all adds up. And the fee that you pay for that is based on how many shares there are and how much they're worth. And 100,000 shares is more than 100. That might be why. You can always add more later, issue more. You can amend your original documents to have more, and then you can also issue more. So you could have 1,000 shares and only issue 100 of them give them out, and then the rest are just like owned by the corporation itself, which can be helpful when you want to divvy things up later. If you're the only owner and you're the only person who's going to do it, it may not matter that much. But if you're going to bring in other partners later, bring in investors, then it will matter more. Okay, let me go look. So for an operating agreement is for an LLC, including an LLC that is taxed as an S corp. The operating agreement, pretty much, it is operating agreements kind of like bylaws. It's like the partnership agreement for how the LLC will run. Then you would have minutes of a meeting of the members of the LLC, if it's an LLC, or you'd have the minutes of the board of directors, if it's a corporation, that does more day-to-day stuff like we approve a business loan or something like that, and who the officers of the company are going to be or whatever. And we approve what banking to do. That's another one that I put in there. And that can just be in writing. I mean, a lot of times I actually will have a meeting with myself because I am sitting here typing it up. This is my meeting. It is Tuesday, October 25th at 10:32 a.m. Like that's legitimate. I'm having a meeting with myself by typing it in to the form, so you can just do it that way. And then you don't have to debate about it. A corporation needs board members. Yeah. So an LLC taxed as an S corp does not need board members because the legal status is an LLC. It has members who are the owners. That's just what they call that. The LLC could instead of being run by the members, it could be run by a manager. And a manager doesn't have to be one of the owners. It could be like someone you hire out. But a lot of really small LLCs are run by just the members, the owners, and then that's what it has. It doesn't have a board of directors or anything. And it can be really confusing because you have an LLC taxed as an S corp. The legal status is an LLC, so that's what runs all the legal stuff. The only part the S corporation impacts is tax stuff. Okay. Do you want to find? Do you know where I can find the formalities of how to manage a professional corporation? Oh yeah. So, most of managing a professional corporation is going to be the same as any corporation. So you can, get a book I recommend books from Nolo Publishing. I really like their books. I have one of them with them. I'm looking at it right now. That's why I mentioned it. This is one I'm going to do a review of soon. On just like corporations or in the book that's specific to your state. The only thing that's going to be different are things that are specific to your license. And then you get that from your licensing board. So from like in California, I don't know if all of them do, but most of the licensing boards have some form you have to file with them that says that you have this professional corporation, all this kind of stuff, and that they approve the name, maybe things like that. And in that form, or as part of the instructions of that, it will give you any special rules. So, for example, that's where it has my special rules about that I have to say that I've complied with, that my law firm can only be owned by lawyers. And so typically, like some kind of health practice can only be owned by other health professionals. That will be like the thing in the health practice. I'd like to transfer my LLC ownership. How do I do that? What's the process? So you have to go back if your LLC has an operating agreement, which it doesn't legally have to, but well, I think it has to in once. I think New York it might have to, but most places it doesn't. If your LLC has an operating agreement, you go to the operating agreement and see what it says. That's the first place to start. Now, if you don't have an LLC operating agreement, then you have to go to the code in your state to see what the rules are for transferring the ownership. Um, and what I mean is like sometimes the operating agreement may say that it has to be unanimous approval of all the LLC owners, the LLC members, or it might be just a 51% or whatever. So you have to see what the rule is for transferring. You might have to like give all the other members an opportunity to buy it at the same price before you sell it to the outsider, things like that. Now, as far as how it works logistically, is you just have some kind of contract to transfer the shares. Occasionally, there'll be people who have actually issued membership certificates in the LLC, and then you look at the certificate and see how it is transferred. But a lot of times, the LLCs we don't actually even make a membership certificate, or which would be kind of looks like a stock certificate. And yeah, then the new person would sign the operating agreement and they'd take it over. You'd have like a buy, sell, purchase agreement. So they agree to take over the membership in exchange for whatever the price is. And when they do that, they're taking over any liabilities, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's just a contract. Could you explain the trust? Oh yeah. So the short answer to the trust part of the form 2553 is it applies to almost no one. I'm not gonna say it applies to no one because it applies to somebody. But if you like I'm gonna actually Google that to see if I could give you something that explains it, what it actually is. Um, so let's have you would if you were setting up that kind of a trust, a qualified subchapter S trust, you would probably know it. This is something that you would be working with an accountant or financial advisor or lawyer or something to do. Let me look and see when people do it. Like typically it's yeah, it is a very, very specific kind of thing that you would work with a tax person about. So I've literally never had someone be setting that up, even though I might have clients who eventually later set it up that was part of their estate planning. Like a lot of times this is going to be part of estate planning. So that would be the person you would be working with. Um Yeah, I know. It's those forms can be very complicated, like overly complicated, right? That most of the stuff doesn't apply to most people. Okay, the $70 filing fee is waived. When will the $800 year come due for California LLC? Is it July, October, based on the new corp? So the $800 year filing fee is a fee based on like the year, like literally for 2022 or 2023 or whatever it is. Right now, I think it's until the end of 2023. The $800 a year, it's a tax. The minimum franchise fee tax is waived for the first year, and I mean the first like number year, 2022 or 2023, whatever it is, that you form your LLC, and then it kicks in the next year. And it's typically paid either when you file your tax return, so way after, or you actually pay it in what they want you to do is pay it in like quarterly installments, as estimated taxes. Uh, it's not if you have a fiscal year, I I would think it's based on your own fiscal year, but I'm not 100% sure because I haven't done someone's taxes on that since I don't obviously do tax. Well, that's not obvious. I don't do people's tax returns, so I haven't done someone's taxes if they do a fiscal year. If you're doing fiscal year stuff, I'd recommend that you work with a tax person because there's going to be a whole bunch of things that you're going to have to do a slightly different. Um, so yeah, that's my kind of idea about that. So what is the difference between a DBA and assumed name? So there's a lot of different words that a lot of times mean the same thing. So a DBA is doing business as, which in many states is what it's called. But in California, it's called a fictitious business name. I don't know why. They just call it something different. So in some cases, it's called your trade name. So most likely, like, there's tons of different words for the same thing. I think people say DBA the most because people have heard of that the most. But yeah, it just depends on what your state calls it or your county calls it. The filings for DBAs, some states don't even have it. And in some states, it's in the state level, and some places it's in the county level. And in some places, you don't do it at all for some reason that I don't know why. All right, let me look over and see if we got any other things. I think that the chat system is actually working pretty well. Okay. Yeah, well, I wait for some more questions to come in if you guys have any more. A couple things that will be coming up. Like I talked about, the Patreon will be launching soon. I don't know exactly the date because I have to get all the checklists done. In the Patreon, there'll be multiple levels. The first level will have, you get all the checklists and videos that go with the checklist and all that stuff. The second level, you get to DM me on Discord because everyone's going to be part of the Discord. That's how a lot of this will work. You get to DM me on Discord and be part of group chats where we'll answer legal questions, but not in the public like this. It'll be like in a private Discord thing that people in the public can't see. Only members can see that. And at the highest level, you get a 15-minute one-on-one call with me once a month, as long as you're a member at that level. So that will be the way to access me one-on-one or in a more like in a less public setting in the future. Once I actually finish it all and get it launched. And then meanwhile, you still can join the Discord. I'm going to actually, let me renew this up here. I'm going to send you, post the invite people link. I'm going to copy that and post that in the chat if you want to join there. And a couple people have already joined, which is lovely and fun. Okay. Let me go back and look up. I'm not making enough to pay myself a salary. We would be penalized for this at tax time. So you, whether or not you make a profit is based on your tax year, which for most people is in the beginning is a calendar year. So the only time it can be awkward is, let's say you don't pay yourself out during the year because you're not making any money. But at the end of the year, you actually end up making a profit. Maybe just on paper, you don't pay yourself any of that profit. It's like sitting in the checking account, but and it's a profit of, $300 or whatever. That profit, even if you don't pay it to yourself, does go on your personal tax return. I'm assuming you have either a sole proprietorship or an LLC that's taxed as sole proprietorship. So it's from a tax perspective, it's the same. And so you end up having to pay taxes on that. It, however, gets put with all your other income. So like, for example, let's say I have an LLC that makes, that's taxed as sole proprietorship. It makes $300 in profit, but I already have like my day job and I made enough money on that where I paid all kinds of taxes, then I may not having to actually pay extra because I might have paid enough taxes, had enough taxes taken out of my paycheck in my regular job, or my spouse did or whatever. So that can happen. That's kind of awkward. But otherwise, if the business loses money, then it just loses money. Now, there can be an issue where if someone has a business where it loses money year after year after year after year, the IRS can audit that and be like, you just have a hobby. It's not a real business. You shouldn't be taking in tax deductions for this. I honestly have not heard of anyone that actually happened to, but I know it does happen. And typically they would be auditing you like in one of those random audits. And that would you have to prove that you really were trying to make a profit, because it's not that you are being punished for not making a profit. It's that they think that you're just having a hobby. So you have to prove up all the business activities you did. So you did all this marketing, you did all this work, et cetera, et cetera. And then you could prove that up with the IRS if you got audited. So hopefully that won't happen. Okay. Yes. Oop, let me scroll up. Can your trade name be slightly different from your registration name with the state of California? So let's say you form, XYZ LLC, and then you have some other name that you're using. So if it still has XYZ LLC somewhere in that, or XYZ is in it, and then you put the XYZ LLC at the bottom, in the footer of your website, that might be fine. It's where you use a different name. Then you'd file a DBA for the LLC in your county. So, and that legally ties them together. And that's all helpful because then you can put that on your bank account and your merch account and stuff like that. So that we do that regularly. We file DBAs for the LLC or corporation. Um, it goes to the name you do business in California, for example, has to be you have to have the legal name of your business in that name. So if you're a sole proprietor, it has to have your name in it. So it has to be, Weinstein Financial Consulting, which was a business I had a long time ago. Then I don't even need to do a DBA because it has my name in it. I might end up still having to do it because the bank might make me. But okay. If you have a single member LLC, you run more than one online store using different names. Should you add the assumed name to your LLC state filing? That, it depends on the state. So in some states, assumed names go on your LLC filing. For those of you who don't know, that's not true in California. In California, the assumed name, which is the FBN, fictitious business name, does done at the county level, totally separate. But in some states, I think like Washington State, you put the assumed names under there. Yes, I would go ahead and add them. I would amend what I filed to add those assumed names if you file it all as part of your original filings with your LLC with the state. Da, 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 da. How can you notice the state the ownership of the LLC has been transferred? So, like, it would depend on the state, but in California, you would file an updated statement of information, and in the statement of information, you put who all the owners are, which are the members. And so, when you list all the members, it would be the new members. And that's how the state knows. And in other states, you may do a annual statement or an annual return, or is there some kind of annual report. Every state calls it different things. Um, yeah, so one of the things about when you start a business and you're not making a lot of money yet, what I recommend is, let's say making $0. If you're losing money, you don't do this. But if you're making anything, what I recommend is you pay yourself on a regular basis, which could be once a month, twice a month, once a week. I actually pay myself once a week because I like it. Okay. But that's personal preference. But you pay yourself on a regular basis even if you only pay yourself $30. You know what I mean? Like the idea is that you're creating this behavior of this is a real business where I pay myself on a regular basis, even if it's a tiny amount of money because it didn't make very much money this week, and then you're always paying yourself. I think it puts you in a very good habit. I've seen it many, many times. I had clients where they've have a business that's literally making six figures and they still pay themselves zero. And their attitude is, oh, well, I love this business, my passion, and I'm growing it and blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, pay yourself something. If you have employees and they're getting paid and you're not getting paid, this business actually isn't profitable. You may think it is, but until the owner is getting paid, it is not making a profit because you're doing it for free. And you should be getting paid for the work that you do. In the beginning, it'll be a tiny amount. I think my first paycheck I pay myself for this law firm, because I had a whole lot of, startup expenses, right? My malpractice insurance is terrible. That's just how much it costs, thousands of dollars every year. I think my first one, it was like, less than $100, some tiny, tiny amount of money, but that's okay because you just do it. If you pay yourself once a week or once a month or whatever it is, and then eventually it will be more. It's also fun to pay yourself. It's a very good habit to be in. Okay. Yeah. So I also want to share a little bit about some future projects that I'm planning to do for y'all. Probably mostly will be in 2023, but I'm going to start working on them now. So I'm going to be filing a trademark application for myself for my side business, my other YouTube channel. And I'm going to record all that, like what I decide to do. It's going to be an intent to use application, all the decisions I make, what the trademark office comes back with, all that stuff. And it'll be a series of videos because it'll take a long time for the trademark office to get back, as you all know, who have looked into that stuff. But this way you can see what I'm actually doing because it's mine. So it's not like me violating attorney-client privilege to show you because I'm representing myself. So I can show you all this stuff. I'm also going to set up an LLC in New Mexico for that business. I'm picking New Mexico because it's very low cost and also because I own raw land there that I'm going to build a tiny house on. Whole nother story. So I'm going to actually be changing over my residency to that. eventually, like in a couple years. So it makes sense to set it up there. I'm going to use Northwest to do that. And so then I can record all that for you and show you what it's like to use Northwest, because it's hard to recommend things when I haven't. I've used them for registered agent services, but not for setting up everything. So I think that would be really helpful for y'all to see how that works. And yeah, I have a whole bunch of other projects where I'm going to be actually doing real things from beginning to end, setting up an LLC all the way from beginning to end, doing the DBAs, getting the seller's permit, all that stuff, and then shut it all down and show you all those processes. So these will be kind of more long-term projects, but I think it'll be very helpful because it will show you how things actually work. Okay, so let me look over and see. Yeah, so if you give yourself a salary, so it depends on the way your business is. So if you have a sole proprietorship, for example, when you pay yourself, you do it as a distribution. Also, a partnership is like this. It's a distribution. And so then you literally just write a check for $30 and you keep a log of it in your bookkeeping or whatever, of your distributions. But if you have an LLC that's taxed as an S corp, or a corporation that's taxed as an S corp, or a corporation that's taxed as a C corp, or an LLC taxed as a C corp, then you have to run payroll. I use Gusto. I'm going to put the link to them in here, because there's probably many other services, but they were one of the first good services that's easy to use. And this is who I use to run payroll for myself. I no longer have any employees. I have had 5 employees over the years at the highest level. It's the biggest I've ever been, but now I'm down to just me because I run kind of a very tight ship at this point. But I use them to run my payroll, and they take out all the taxes and do all that stuff. And that's great because back in the day, my very first business, many years ago, like 18 years ago, a long time, I had an employee and ran payroll for both of us, and I did it by hand, like literally with pencil and pen and paper. And I messed it up like every month. And then started using QuickBooks for it and still messed it up. So having a service to do it for you, I highly recommend. Is totally worth it because I messed it up like so every year I'd mess something up and it owe a bunch of fines and it sucked. So I highly recommend using a service. Let's see. If you have an S corp or corporation with no income, do you still need to run payroll? So if you have zero income, then no, you will not run payroll because there's no money to pay anybody. Um, the the main thing with running payroll is if you can't be distributing money to you as the owner, where you only pay income tax and not self-employment tax or FICAs or any of that jazz, unless you are running payroll. So if your business loses money or makes nothing in that year, then you wouldn't run payroll, but you also wouldn't do a distribution to yourself. So you're just kind of neutral in that way. So that can totally happen the first year or two. Um, okay. Yeah, training courses. So yeah, totally. If you do educational trainings, join some group program, you buy books, any of that stuff is a tax deduction. So I have something in I have I don't remember what I call it, educational stuff. That's for all the books and all the courses I take. And I have to do continuing education as a lawyer, like all that stuff goes in that line. It's actually really nice because I enjoy learning things. And so now I have a line to get a tax deduction on all the things I want. Um, if you have a single member LLC isn't as income, how do dependents work? I don't know what you mean, how do dependents work? So maybe try to rephrase that question. I actually don't understand. Maybe you mean deductions? I don't know. Let me know. Okay, so we're at 10:54. So I'm only going to be on here till 11 o'clock. So if you have any last questions, make sure you get them in. I do the live stream Q&As on YouTube. Right now I'm doing about once a quarter. I'm going to be doing some more stuff on Discord and then even more stuff in the Patreon once it gets launched. So just something to keep in mind, if you would like to, for your children. So, um, if you have a single member LLC, so maybe what you mean is having your kids work for the LLC. or like for whatever business you have, you can, in some cases, have your dependent children work for the business and get paid. Sometimes you can put all the money in an IRA or 401k. How that works, though, depends on the kind of business you have and how old they are and a whole bunch of different things. So, for example, I actually looked into this here in California, in my county and city, and all this stuff because my business was a corporation. I actually couldn't have my kid work for me when they were really young, relatively young, because that the kind of child labor exception didn't apply because I had a corporation, not sole proprietorship or partnership. So there's a lot of rules about that stuff. Um, so the regular credit dependence, that should not change. Like your regular 1040 taxes do not change like how, your deduction for having underage children or all that stuff works. How it works is if you have a LLC, your deductions will be on the Schedule C, which is a separate like form that gets attached to your 1040. And then you add up all your income and expenses, whatever, and gets to a bottom line, and that gets put on a line on your regular 1040. So it doesn't impact your deductions for children or your standard deduction or anything. Um, Thank you for saying congratulations about 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, it was really fun to see that number roll over yesterday to hit 10,000. You don't get like a special plaque or anything. That's like 100,000. It used to be that it was a whole bunch of features you got to use when you hit 10,000 subscribers. Now, most of those you actually get at lower points. So I've already gotten most of those things. I can start doing in like a week, they'll probably activate so I can do stories, but I don't know if I'm going to use that. I don't know if anyone uses stories on YouTube anymore. I mean, people do it on Instagram, but so yes, thank you for saying congratulations. Let's see. I actually don't personally know any construction attorneys in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I haven't. I don't think I know of any around here. And the only ones that I've known in other parts of California, it was so long ago, like 20 years ago, that I wouldn't be able to recommend anything. Yeah, I already can do shorts. I think they still have stories because it says that I get it, but like I think maybe they don't even have stories anymore. It's just shorts. I don't know. Okay, so we got a minute or two left. If you have any last questions, let me know. Um, And I will post one more link over to the Discord if you want to join with that. Um, and it'll be ramping up over time. Just to let everyone know who doesn't know what Discord is like Slack, Facebook group, forum, whatever. It's just Discord. And I really like Discord because it gives you a lot more control over moderation versus Slack. Like if someone's creeping you out on Discord, you can block them. You don't have to like come to me. You know what I mean? And the lower levels of like you don't have to even pay for Discord unless you want to add like fancy stuff, which is really nice too. And Discord's really about community versus like corporations where like Slack is for big corporations. And then I definitely don't want to be on a Facebook group. I don't even have Facebook anymore. Um, so yeah, I saw that they're doing a whole new monetization for YouTube Shorts that I think they're officially changing it over in the spring, but I can't remember when the exact month is. Where now getting money for doing your shorts is like this. There's like a fund. It's kind of like just how TikTok is, but starting soon, a few months, they're going to have it be just like how YouTube videos are. Because like when I do a video, I can see exactly how much money it makes, and I get my effectively half of the money that YouTube makes on it, which is great. And then you can it's very motivating, right? And it also gives you full disclosure on what's going on, so you understand what's happening. Where these funds are very vague, it's not very motivating for me. Okay, Scott, you're well, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for saying congratulations. And I'm really glad that it was helpful for you all. If you have any last questions, let me know. Otherwise, in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. It's probably delayed, so hopefully it'll catch up on the time. Um, okay, here. And let's see, any other things? Yeah, so I'll do another one of these on YouTube in a couple months. I'll probably do other things. I've definitely going to do some other things on Discord in between, and then the Patreon when it launches, I'll do some more things on that on a more regular basis. So thank you all for being here today. And I think it was really productive. We got a lot of people's questions answered. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can always go on the YouTube channel and look for, you can search, go to my channel and actually search in there, and you can find videos that apply to exactly what you're doing. And then if you join the Discord, you can post things in there like, hey, make a video about this. And then I can add that to the list. So thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.